Historically part of the North Riding of Yorkshire, the town of Scarborough sits on the edge of the North Sea, roughly 10 to 230 feet above sea level. With a total of 61,000 people residing here, the town has become a popular holiday resort during the summer seasons, with the locals being known as Scarboroughians. Tourists and holidaymakers alike arrive here, normally by car or from the nearby railway station, that sees an hourly service ply daily between here and York, operated by TransPennine Express. The station as we see it today is Grade 2 listed, dating from the opening of the line in 1845, designed by G.T. Andrews and formerly known as Scarborough Central. Management of the station comes from that train operating company, and it's here we will join a brand new train, a Nova 3, consisting of 5 Mark 5A coaches with a Class 68 diesel locomotive at the London end, powering us to York. Sitting on platform 1 is a famous landmark. One of the longest railway benches in the world resides here. From Scarborough to York, the distance is 42 miles. Trains call at Seamer and Malton before York, taking an average journey time of 47 minutes. Signalling on the line is operated on the one train per section absolute block principle. The old signal box at the end of the platform still stands to this day, but no longer in use. Instead, it has been preserved. A station was located here and called Scarborough-Lonsborough Road, which opened in 1908. It was once a junction station, the route of which diverged off towards the northeast at the former Falgrave Junction. This was the route taken to Whitby, constructed by the Scarborough and Whitby Railway Company, who opened the line in 1885. For many years, excursion trains used to be stored in the expansive carriage yard at Gallows Close during the busy summer months. Despite this, the line had become notoriously impractical to work, with trains having to run into the main station to gain access to the Whitby line, especially in steam days when this was time-consuming and disruptive to other services. Diesel trains soon began operating over the route by the 1960s, but this hardly improved, as the route had some severe gradients along the way. Closure came in 1968, although a short section of track between Hawksir and Whitby remained in operation for freight to travel to the potash mine until 1972. All the way from York, our route was promoted and built by the Yorkshire North Midland Railway, engineered by George Hudson. He was a tough-nosed businessman who made his fame and fortune by building railways in the Yorkshire area, largely as a result of embezzlement and malpractices. The 42-mile-long line took a relatively quick time to build in a space of just 1 year and 3 days, with the service starting on the 7th of June 1845. We are now arriving at Seamer. Here we can bear witness the signal box that is controlling our route at present. The island platform dates from day one, as it was chosen to make it easier for passengers to change between the three routes rather than doing so at Scarborough. One of those routes is the line towards Bridlington and Hull, which is today taken by northern trains on an hourly basis. This is where the line to Hull diverges. It opened as far as Filey in 1846 and incidentally to Bridlington a year later, for when it made a head-on connection with the line from Hull. Opposite was where yet another line diverged, known as the Forge Valley Line to Pickering, though strangely enough it didn't actually pass through the valley of that name. It was 16 miles long and opened in 1882 as a single line. However, as is the way of things, the line succumbed to bus competition, forcing the passenger service to be withdrawn in June 1950, in addition to closing the line between Seamer and Thorntondale. All that remained was a 2.5 mile long section from Pickering to Thorntondale to serve the local quarries, but even this ended up closing in the month of January 1963. On the opening day of the railway, George Hudson had invited many guests to bear witness the ceremonial opening of the railway, riding on board 40 coaches hauled by 2 steam engines. Initially the line was a single track, and the journey time between York and Scarborough took a gruelling 3.5 hours, nearly a third of that by today's standards. Once the train had arrived in Scarborough, the guests were invited to a spot of lunch before venturing back down the line to York, where they had dinner in the Guildhall, hosted by the Lord Mayor of York. Over the years, there have been many stations which have come and gone. We are now passing the site of Ganton, opening with the line in 1845. Like most stations on the route, they had closed on the 22nd of September 1930, but the goods traffic facilities here at Ganton continued on until 1964. The station opened with the line in 1845 with the name Sherburn, but was renamed Wycombe after the village that was situated 3 miles away in 1874. In 1882, with the opening of another Wycombe station on the aforementioned Forge Valley line, forced another name change, this time being called Weaverthorpe. That village lay nearly 5 miles away over the Wold Escarpment, quite disappointing for passengers who wished to alight here. This stretch of the line is notorious for the amount of level crossings as we pass over East Heslington AHB, automatic half barrier crossing. This is West Heslington AHB, with the traditional crossing keeper's house located on the right. 14 Class 68 diesel locos were ordered by TransPennine Express on their long-distance services between Scarborough and Liverpool, but also on the Manchester Airport to Redcar Central services. They were manufactured by Stadler Rail for direct rail services in the United Kingdom between 2013 and 2017. The 5 Mark 5A coaches, however, were built by a different company, CAF, or Construcciones y Auxiliar de Ferrocarriles, literally construction and other railway services, a Spanish company. 66 coaches have been built, especially for TPE, and the first train, complete with Class 68 loco, entered service between Liverpool and Scarborough in August 2019. The site of Heslington Station. The round speed sign displays 90 with the letters SP above it. This implies specifically for sprinters, meaning certain trains can increase to this speed limit, whilst the rest, including us, due to the Class 68s and the Mark 5A's weight, must operate at 70 miles per hour. Here was Knapton Station. Behind and looming ever closer is the malting factory that was built on the former goods yard. In February 2009, the Liverpool to Scarborough train struck the rear end of a car who ignored the warning signals and manoeuvred around the half barriers. Fortunately, there were no fatalities, but for the rest of the day, passengers had to continue their journey by replacement bus service. High and Low Scampston AHB. This was Rillington Station. It might have closed in 1930, but was used by special charter trains until the 1960s. Since then, part of the station building was converted to become a private residence, with the other part being demolished. It was also the junction with another line to Pickering, opening at the same time as our line. It closed in 1967, but part of the line is under the control of the preserved North Yorkshire Moors Railway Society, who started their services in 1970 between Pickering and Grosmont. Talks had been made to reinstate the link to Pickering to allow the North Yorkshire Moors Railway to connect with the National Rail network. Such a move has been made unlikely and will not be proceeded with for the foreseeable future. We passed below the A64 main road. This is the distance signal for Malton. The automatic warning system, or AWS, applies for the upside-down triangular sign, which indicates a reduction in speed. As such, the driver needs to decelerate from 75 to 20. This bridge abutment once carried the Thirsk and Malton line from a triangular junction of the East Coast Main Line. It connected with the Malton and Driffield Junction Railway, whose line converged from the left to meet the former at Scarborough Road Junction. The MDJR ran as it suggests to Driffield on the Hull to Scarborough line, and it was initially envisaged for express trains to work between Hull and Glasgow. Instead, it was worked by local commuter services. The 22-mile-long line is now closed as a result of bus competition and the Beeching Acts. This occurred in the intervening years of 1930, 1953 and 1964. We encounter a red signal because the late-running Scarborough service is still occupying the single-line passenger loop at Malton. A few minutes later, the down train passes us, allowing the signal to illuminate the junction indicator and display a green. Malton's signal box oversees the control of the manually controlled barrier crossing over Castlegate, as well as another block section. An unusual prospect. Only one platform remains here at Malton Station, owing to rationalisation in the 1980s. At its peak, there used to be 2 through platforms and 1 bay, used mainly by local Whitby services, all adjoined by an overall roof. While that has now gone, the traditional YNMR canopy from the Whitby platform has been repositioned over the main platform. The station building is now a Grade 2 listed structure, serving a town in excess of 13,000. We take the 15-mile-per-hour turnout onto the Up Scarborough. The block section has now passed from the control of Malton to Kirkham Abbey. another advance warning of a 40 mph speed restriction. This refers to the speed limit over the River Derwent. We crossed the River Derwent at Hutton's Ambo on a lattice girder bridge. The Derwent flows from the Flyingdale Moors in the North York Moors National Park through the Vale of Pickering and the Vale of York, meeting up with the River Ouse at Barnby on the Marsh. In total, the river flows for 71.5 miles. Hutton's Ambo station building still survives alongside the railway, originally opening with the name of Chus Hutton. The suffix Ambo was added in 1885. There was a proposal for a narrow gauge railway to operate from here to Burrythorpe back in 1913, but was never implemented. As mentioned earlier, the line took a relatively short time to build, as the YNMR had opted the decision to follow the valley of the River Derwent, instead of building tunnels beneath the Howardian Hills to the south of Malton. This would have meant time and money on building tunnels, with navvies having to supply the gunpowder and dynamite to search a suitable path through the hills. This more circuitous route meanders like the river for the next 4 miles, creating a slower but more scenically pleasant experience for passengers. This was Crambeck. The disused station was Castle Howard, often used by aristocracy. Notable visitors were Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert when they visited the nearby castle in August 1850. There has been a castle, or in proper terms a mansion here, since 1699, taking over 100 years to build and designed by Sir John Vanbrugh for the 3rd Earl of Carlisle. Currently the mansion is still the main residence of the Howard family, with the family allowing visitors to explore the main building and gardens to discover the rich history. Back on the railway, Castle Howard had managed to have its own station open with the line back in 1845. Its passenger service was withdrawn in 1930, although the station continued to be staffed in association to the goods traffic, delivering small volumes of parcels to the nearby mansion until the 1950s. Now we pass Kirkham Abbey, opened as just Kirkham until 1875, when the suffix was added. It's still good to see traditional wooden gates opened and closed by hand, with a signal box that's still controlling semaphore signals from a lever frame. Enjoy it while it lasts, as it's expected soon to see the elimination of all these manually controlled gated crossings and semaphore signals, to be replaced by state-of-the-art technology. The 89 level crossings on the route, along with the 10 automatic, 12 supervised and 67 user work crossings will in 2025 pass to the domain of York's Rail Operating Centre, rendering the closure of the 7 signal boxes that control the line. Here was the site of a small wayside station. Howsham only lasted for 4 years from 1845 as a result of low patronage. The signals here only indicate the status of the level crossing, which will only be pulled off once they are closed to road traffic. That sound you've just heard is the driver's vigilance device, a modern-day dead man's handle. When the sound goes off, the driver is instructed to lift his foot momentarily off the pedal to cancel the sound. They have at least 3 to 5 seconds to cancel the audible note. If they do not, the train's brakes will be applied automatically. Located here was Barton Hill Station, serving the villages of both Barton Hill and Barton Le Willows. Up until 1853, the hill suffix was yet to be added. The reason behind these stations being closed in 1930 was due to the fact that the number of excursion and holiday trains using the line ran non-stop to Scarborough from York. This meant that the line had become busier than usual, hence why the passenger traffic had to be withdrawn in 1930, as there simply was no way the line could accommodate local trains. Special steam-hauled summer services are also seen over the line by many preserved locomotives, some of which operate out of the Railway Museum in York. Signalling passes from Barton Hill to Strensall. Common Road MCG, manually controlled gate. The signal box design is typical from NER times here at Strensall. There have been talks to reopen the former station here, as well as the nearby village of Haxby, as these areas have become more and more populated over the years. Since 2010, these plans have been postponed, pending further decision making from the railway authorities. Strensall did have the delight of having two stations in the village. The other was located just here and opened by the LNER in 1926. Haxby is the last closed station before York, and as such was the other station just mentioned, which is a candidate for reopening. The population of the town since the 1980s has reached the 9,000 mark. In addition to this, the road traffic in York has become heavily congested, and building a new station would ease the bottleneck. Again, plans were put on hold since 2010. However, unlike Strensall, it seemed like there was going to be a revival to the station's reopening after an announcement was made by the City of York Council. It looked promising, but after the new station study was made by the West Yorkshire Metro Service in 2014, brought this back to square one, and to this day, plans are still on hold regarding further study to the site. Haxby Road is CCTV monitored by the main rail operating centre at York, which now controls our route to Journey's End. We pass beneath York's main ring road. Just here was where the erstwhile branch line to Beverley used to diverge off to our left. Construction had begun in 1846, and the following year the line reached the town of Market Weighton. 17 years later the line was fully completed. The route was open from either end between York and Beverley. The delay was closely associated with the downfall of George Hudson, in addition to financial constraints following the collapse of the 1840s railway mania. Sadly, the line was recommended for closure in the Beeching Report, and it did so in November 1965. We are travelling through the outskirts of York, a historical walled city sitting on the confluences of the Ouse and Foss rivers. Traditionally the county town of Yorkshire, the city has been here since the Roman conquest in 71 AD as the capital of the Roman provinces of Britannia Inferior and later the kingdom of Deria, Northumbria and Jorvik. York soon became a major railway hub in the 19th century, all thanks to George Hudson. Today, after the 2017 census, the city vaunts a population of 208,000 residents. We are signalled for platform 4. A 15 mph speed restriction has been imposed through this short section of single line and the approach road to York Station. The restriction also applies to trains crossing over the River Ouse. Scarborough Bridge was the second bridge in York to cross the Ouse, built and completed in the time of the inauguration of the line's opening. A £6 million renovation project was implemented on the bridge back in 2015 to replace the main decks. We can now see the overhead wires of the East Coast Main Line on our right. This is the end of the journey for us, but not for the train. But you can still continue watching the rest of the journey on the TransPennine Express route driver's eye view. That video sees the continuation of the route to Liverpool Lime Street. York Station dates from 1877, when the NER replaced the former York and North Midland dead-end terminus of 1841. Its magnificent train shed encounters services operated by LNER on their London King's Cross to Edinburgh service, cross-country on long-distance routes to destinations such as Aberdeen and Penzance, and local northern services. A short stroll away from the station is the National Railway Museum, which contains a wealth of station artefacts and former railway steam locomotives. These collect many relics from the past, and it's a joy to visit by many train enthusiasts and historians to discover the rich history from the past, present and future.